on behalf of the sisterhood about Mother Olga of Alaska. And I'm going to be explaining, I'm going to talk about her life and who she was as a person. And then Ina, is Ina in here? When Ina gets back, Ina's going to talk about, maybe I shouldn't start without having a beat on where she is. But so if anybody wants to go find Ina, that might be a good thing. And then she's going to talk about the sisterhood and how we are inspired by Mother Olga and what she means to us as a sisterhood and what we're doing in her honor. So I want to start by saying that quoting 1 Peter 3:3, and this is for the ladies, and that Mother Olga, to me, as I was researching her life and her reputation, this verse kept coming back to mind. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry or the clothing you wear. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. This is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves. Yeah, so Mother Olga was a very humble person, and I think you're going to see that as we go through her life. I'm just trying to, let me get used to this here. She was born in February 3rd, 1916, and she reposed on November 8th, 1979. So this past week would have been her feast. If she's not yet glorified, but this would be the anniversary of her repose. She wasn't a very old woman when she died. She was only 62, 63. And so her ministry that made such an incredible impact all happened when she was, a very young woman. She was married to the local postmaster when she was a young woman. And he later became Archpriest Father Nikolai Michael. They had 13 children, but only 8 lived to adulthood. So this is a woman who was familiar with grief, and so she could very much understand the sufferings of other women that she encountered. Her lifetime was characterized by Christ-like mercy and selflessness. She was very generous, and that was a mark of her personality. She was incredibly generous. She was always sewing. She sewed her husband's vestments. She was always making mittens and boots and hats for the people of her parish. And I read one article that said hardly anybody in her parish didn't have something that she had made for them for warmth and comfort. So just she had a far reach within her village. She was a midwife and a mother, and I think to me this speaks powerfully because having born children, any mother here would know that is the most vulnerable time of your existence is when you're giving birth, and to have another woman come alongside you and who can help you, strengthen you, and comfort you when you are giving birth. And that is what she did. Though she herself did not have a midwife attend her births, she delivered her own babies because she was the only midwife in town. So I think that's pretty incredible. But what it demonstrates is a woman who doesn't have fear. She's not afraid of life. She's not afraid of giving birth, and she's not afraid of struggle. So that really had a huge impact on me. She was always busy working for the good of her family and her parish. And one other thing that she would was notable was that she would give away her own children's clothing before they had outgrown them. And a lot of times her children would see the other children in the village or in the parish wearing their good dress, and mother would be like, don't say anything, don't say anything, because she saw a need greater than their own in theirs. So that touched me. She was especially caring towards the women who were suffering or who had suffered abuse. There's a high amount of alcoholism among the people. And that would naturally lead to, of course, some abuse of women. And what she would do is she would invite women to the steam baths, and she would sit with them in the baths and counsel them. And she would be able to see the bruises and the marks from the abuse, and in that way she would know, and she would be able to pray for them, and she would be able to comfort them. And you see here we have a picture of our own Vladika there at her gravesite, but in her life, her ministry was very, as you can see, it was quiet, it was unassuming, but it was also powerful in service. And as in her life, since her repose, her ministry has continued. And this is a remarkable ministry. She reposed on November 8th, 1979. She was only 63. But her life and ministry touched so many. On the day of her repose, there was an unusual thaw that occurred. And thousands of people had wanted to come from all over to her funeral, and they couldn't come because in the November weather it was normally frozen. There was an unusual thaw that occurred, and it enabled people to come across, to be able to cross the river and to make it to her funeral. And even though the birds had long since migrated away from Alaska at that time, there were birds who followed the funeral procession to the gravesite and circled at the gravesite, even though it was November. And then the day after her burial, the weather returned to normal, froze back up, and everything returned to the way it would normally be in November in Alaska that time of year. Since her repose, her ministry has continued in both miraculous and tangible ways. There are stories of how she has appeared to women who have been abused or raped, and she has assisted them and comforted them. And I could probably stand here and tell you their stories, but I think it's much better if you look their stories up yourselves. It's something to hear the stories told in a person's own words. So rather than me tell you, I'm going to just encourage you to go home and reflect on what we're talking about here and think about looking up her stories, because they're easily accessible. To read the stories of how she has appeared to people in dreams or in visions, and have led them to the Mother of God. It's incredible. And iconography is one way that we can reflect on her life and think about the fact that she is not yet glorified as a saint, but iconography reflects that she is very well beloved among the Orthodox people. And you see her here in this one. She's dressed in native dress, and she's bearing a basin and a towel, and the towel has a cross on it. And I think that if you've ever heard the expression, we take up the basin and towel, is an indication of how we are to serve one another. We're to serve one another by washing one another's feet. And also a basin and a towel would be very symbolic of the work she did as a midwife. So iconography, there you'll see some with her with the basin and towel. You'll see her now. She's in icons, standing with the Saints of Alaska. So she is generally accepted in the synaxis of Alaskan Saints now, and throughout North America. She's with the Healing Saints here in this icon. You can see her right down here. She's with some of the biggies, the ones we know well, like Saint Pantaleimon and the Mother of God, and saints that I can't read all of them on there, but saints that you know from long church history. And she's a new saint, and she's now being represented in these icons with the biggies. We see her here again with the basin and towel, but she's depicted with the Northern Lights, and that's because she, in one of the stories where she appeared to a woman, she helped her through a very difficult situation where she helped her to labor through the pain and suffering of her rape and abuse that she had endured. And after that situation in this vision this woman had, she showed her the northern lights. And she said to her that God can create great beauty from absolute devastation. And so we see her in icons depicted with the northern lights because that's a famous story of her, and this is a symbol of God's creating great beauty from desolation. So, and here we have an icon that our own Matushka Joanna has written for us, and we are very honored to have this icon. We're going to use this icon as the symbol of our Blessed Mother Olga outreach, which is the outreach that the sisterhood has decided that that's what we should call it. And this is an outreach to mothers and babies, pregnant moms and new moms. And that's where Ina's going to come in and talk about what that outreach is and how we as a parish can get involved and what to look for in the future with this ministry. So